It all started on a crisp morning when the nation was still nursing its coffee and scrolling through social media. James Carville, the fiery Democratic strategist who has always had a knack for stirring up debates, appeared on a popular political talk show. Known for his sharp tongue and no-nonsense attitude, Carville didn't hold back this time either. As soon as the host handed him the mic, he dove straight into one of his trademark rants, this time targeting none other than former President Donald Trump and his wife, Melania. Carville's words were strong, even by his standards. He accused the Trumps of dividing the country with what he called their self-centered behavior. But it wasn't just about politics. He went further, taking aim at Melania's public image. He suggested that her calm and quiet demeanor wasn't genuine, that she might actually be complicit in some of the controversies surrounding her husband. To many viewers, it felt like a low blow, especially because Melania has often been portrayed as someone trying to stay out of the political chaos. Now here's where things got interesting. Sitting miles away, watching the same episode unfold, on his TV screen, was Matt Leavitt, a Republican operative known for his quick thinking and ability to fight back with equal force. Leavitt wasn't just any commentator. He was fiercely loyal to the Trump family and had spent years defending them against critics. So when he heard Carville's accusations, something inside him snapped. Instead of letting the moment pass, Leavitt grabbed his phone and fired off a series of tweets that would soon go viral. His response was direct, bold, and packed with emotion. James Carville thinks he can say whatever he wants without consequences, Leavitt wrote. But today, we're setting the record straight. What followed was a thread so scathing that it left people glued to their screens. Leavitt took apart every accusation Carville made, piece by piece. He reminded everyone how much scrutiny Melania had faced during her time as First Lady, from fashion choices to policy initiatives, and argued that she handled it all with grace and dignity. Leavitt didn't stop there. He turned the tables on Carville, accusing him of hypocrisy. Where was James when Democrats were accused of similar things? He asked. Oh, right. He was busy giving them a free pass. This jab hit hard because it resonated with those who felt Carville applied different standards depending on which side of the aisle someone sat. By the end of the thread, Leavitt had not only defended Melania, but also painted Carville as someone playing fast and loose with facts to suit his narrative. Within hours, the internet exploded. Clips from the talk show were shared alongside screenshots of Leavitt's tweets. People couldn't get enough of the drama. Some cheered for Leavitt, praising him for standing up to what they saw as unfair criticism. Others doubled down on Carville's points, arguing that Leavitt was simply deflecting valid concerns. The debate spilled over onto cable news channels, where anchors replayed both sides of the argument while inviting experts to weigh in. Social media buzzed with hashtags like Team Leavitt and Toss Carville Truth, turning the exchange into a national spectacle. What made this clash particularly gripping was the personal nature of it all. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about pride, loyalty, and the art of verbal combat. Both men were seasoned pros, but neither seemed willing to back down. For James Carville, this was familiar territory. He'd thrived in heated debates for decades, earning a reputation as someone who could cut through pretense with surgical precision. But Matt Leavitt was proving to be a worthy opponent, matching Carville's intensity with clarity and conviction. As the day wore on, it became clear that this wasn't going to fizzle out anytime soon. The stakes were high, and the audience was hooked. Would Carville respond? Could Leavitt keep the momentum going? Nobody knew for sure, but one thing was certain. The gloves were off, and the world was watching. This opening salvo set the stage for what promised to be an epic showdown. Little did anyone know, however, that the real fireworks were yet to come. If the first round of this clash was explosive, what happened next took things to a whole new level. Matt Leavitt wasn't done, not by a long shot. His initial tweets had already gone viral, but he knew that wasn't enough. If he wanted to truly make an impact, he needed to dig deeper and hit harder. And that's exactly what he did. Leavitt didn't just stop at calling out James Carville for hypocrisy. He went after every single accusation with surgical precision. He started breaking down Carville's claims one by one, using facts, logic, and even a bit of humor to drive his points home. For instance, when Carville criticized Melania for being too quiet during her time as First Lady, Leavitt pointed out how much pressure she faced in such a high-profile role. Melania didn't have the luxury of saying whatever came to mind, he tweeted. She had to walk a tightrope between diplomacy and authenticity, and she did it with dignity. But Leavitt didn't shy away from getting personal either. He reminded everyone of Carville's own history, highlighting moments where his fiery rhetoric had backfired or come across as overly aggressive. One tweet read, "James loves to throw stones, but has anyone noticed his glass house lately?" It was clever, biting, and impossible to ignore. People couldn't help but laugh or cringe at how accurately Leavitt was hitting the mark. As the hours passed, Leavitt kept firing off replies to anyone who engaged with him online. Whether it was journalists asking follow-up questions, supporters cheering him on, or critics trying to poke holes in his arguments, he responded to all of them. Each response added another layer to his defense of the Trumps while simultaneously dismantling Carville's narrative. By the end of the day, Leavitt's name was trending worldwide, and his social media followers skyrocketed. What made Leavitt's approach so effective was his tone. While Carville's comments often came across as blunt and dismissive, Leavitt struck a balance between confidence and respect. Sure, he was defending the Trump family fiercely, but he also acknowledged legitimate criticisms when they arose. This nuance gave his arguments credibility, making it harder for opponents to dismiss him outright. Meanwhile, James Carville found himself in uncharted territory. Known for dominating debates and leaving his rivals speechless, he now seemed caught off guard. When reporters reached out for his reaction to Leavitt's barrage of tweets, Carville brushed them off initially. "Oh, you know how these things go," he said casually during a brief appearance on another show. "People get worked up over nothing." But behind the scenes, sources close to him revealed that he was more rattled than he let on. Carville prided himself on being quick-witted and always ready with a comeback. Yet Leavitt's relentless attack left him scrambling. Friends mentioned seeing him hunched over his laptop late at night, scrolling through Twitter threads and muttering under his breath. Clearly, this wasn't just another political squabble. It felt personal. The public, meanwhile, couldn't get enough of the drama. Social media lit up with memes comparing the two men. Some depicted Carville as a grizzled boxing coach yelling from the sidelines, only to be outmaneuvered by a younger, sharper fighter, Leavitt. Others poked fun at Leavitt's polished demeanor versus Carville's raw energy. Regardless of where people stood politically, they were entertained and invested. Cable news networks capitalized on the frenzy, dedicating entire segments to dissecting the feud. Analysts debated whether Carville's style was outdated in today's fast-paced, digital age where soundbites ruled supreme. Was his reliance on old-school tactics making him vulnerable to quicker, savvier opponents like Leavitt? Or was this simply a case of two strong personalities clashing? Even casual viewers began taking sides. Supporters of the Trumps praised Leavitt for standing up to what they saw as baseless attacks. They argued that Melania deserved better than to be dragged into partisan mudslinging. On the flip side, Carville's fans insisted that his critiques were valid and accused Leavitt of deflecting real issues with slick talking points. By the time the dust settled, temporarily at least, it was clear that something significant had shifted. Leavitt wasn't just holding his ground, he was gaining momentum. His ability to combine substance with style made him a formidable opponent, and his growing fan base celebrated him as a rising star in conservative circles. For Carville, however, the situation was murkier. He still commanded respect and admiration from many, but there was no denying that Leavitt had landed some serious blows. The question now was whether Carville would regroup and strike back, or if he'd retreat quietly, licking his wounds. Little did anyone realize, though, that this was far from over. Both men were gearing up for their next moves, and the stakes were higher than ever. What started as a heated exchange on social media was quickly escalating into a full-blown showdown, one that would captivate audiences and test the limits of political discourse in modern times. As the feud between James Carville and Matt Leavitt continued to dominate headlines, It wasn't just political junkies who were tuning in. People from all walks of life. Parents scrolling through their phones while waiting at soccer practice. College students debating over coffee. Retirees watching cable news. Were glued to the drama. It had become more than a clash of ideologies. It was a spectacle that tapped into something deeper. Pride, loyalty, and the age-old thrill of watching. Two heavyweights go head-to-head kept everyone on edge. The divide among viewers was as sharp as ever. On one side, you had supporters of the Trump family rallying behind Leavitt. They saw him as a voice of reason, someone brave enough to call out what they believed were unfair attacks on Melania. Social media posts flooded in praising her poise, under pressure, and pointing out how much scrutiny she endured during her time as First Lady. "She didn't deserve this," one commenter wrote. Matt is speaking the truth. On the other hand, Carville's fans weren't backing down either. They argued that his critiques were valid and accused Leavitt of dodging real issues by focusing on personal attacks. For them, Carville's fiery style wasn't outdated. It was necessary in an era where politicians often got away with half-truths. "If we don't hold people accountable," one supporter tweeted, "who will?" What made this story even more fascinating was how quickly it transcended traditional political boundaries. Even those who didn't follow politics closely found themselves drawn into the debate. Late-night comedians turned the feud into punchlines, delivering jokes about everything from Carville's Louisiana drawl to Leavitt's polished demeanor. Memes comparing the two men popped up everywhere, some funny, some biting, but all wildly shareable. One meme showed a boxing ring with Carville in one corner looking like a weathered prizefighter, while Leavitt stood confidently in the other, wearing a suit and tie. The caption read, "Old school versus new school." But beyond the memes and hashtags, there was a sense that something bigger was happening here. This wasn't just about two men arguing over policy or personalities. It was about the power of words in shaping public opinion. Every tweet, every soundbite, every retort carried weight because millions of people were watching, and both Carville and Leavitt knew it. For Leavitt, this moment was an opportunity to shine. He embraced the spotlight, using interviews and appearances to reinforce his message. When asked whether he thought he'd gone too far in attacking Carville, personally he shook his head. "I'm not interested in tearing anyone down," he said calmly. "But when someone spreads misinformation or outright insults a person I respect, I have a duty to respond." His measured tone resonated with many, especially those tired of the constant shouting matches that dominated modern politics. Carville, meanwhile, seemed caught between doubling down and stepping back. In a rare move, he avoided direct engagement with Leavitt for several days, instead choosing to address the controversy indirectly. During a radio interview, he dismissed Leavitt's responses as noise designed to distract from larger issues. But listeners could tell something was off. The usual fire in his voice felt dimmed, replaced by a hint of uncertainty. Even longtime fans noticed a shift. "James usually owns these kinds of debates," one caller remarked during a live segment. "This time feels different." Behind the scenes, sources close to Carville revealed that he was grappling with doubts. Known for his razor-sharp wit and ability to turn any argument in his favor, he now faced a challenge unlike any he'd encountered before. Leavitt's combination of facts, charisma, and social media savvy left Carville struggling to find his footing. Friends described late-night phone calls where he vented frustration, questioning whether his approach needed tweaking in today's fast-paced digital landscape. "He's used to being the loudest voice in the room," one insider said. But Matt isn't shouting, he's strategizing. The tension reached a tipping point when a major news network announced plans to host a live debate between the two men. Viewers immediately began speculating about who would come out on top. Would Carville regain his momentum with a knockout performance, or would Leavitt solidify his status as a rising star by dismantling his opponent's arguments? Tickets to attend the debate sold out within hours, and streaming platforms prepared for record-breaking viewership. Social media buzzed with predictions and trash talk. Some users created fantasy brackets, pitting the two against each other like heavyweight champions. Others debated which topics would be fair game, Policy positions, personal conduct, past controversies. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Even outside observers weighed in. Political analysts noted how unusual it was for such a personal feud to capture national attention. In a world full of noise, one commentator remarked, "This feels unusually raw and human." Another added, "It reminds us that behind every political argument are real emotions, pride, anger, vulnerability." As the day of the debate approached, anticipation reached fever pitch. Families gathered around TVs, friends texted each other updates, and online forums lit up with chatter. No matter where you stood politically, it was impossible to look away. This wasn't just entertainment. It was a moment that reflected the complexities of modern discourse. Two voices, two perspectives, and millions of eyes watching to see who would emerge victorious. And yet, despite all the buildup, no one could predict what would unfold once the cameras rolled. Would sparks fly? Would tempers flare? Or would one side manage to rise above the fray and deliver a performance for the ages? Whatever happened, one thing was certain. History was about to be made. When the night of the live debate finally arrived, it felt like the entire country was holding its breath. The stage was set in a sleek studio with bright lights and an audience buzzing with anticipation. Cameras panned across rows of people, clutching signs, some supporting James Carville, others cheering for Matt Leavitt. Social media feeds were already ablaze with predictions, memes, and hashtags. This wasn't just another political discussion. It was a showdown that promised drama, wit, and maybe even a few surprises. As the two men walked onto the stage, the contrast between them couldn't have been starker. Carville, wearing his signature casual blazer and looking every bit the seasoned veteran, carried himself with a mix of confidence and grit. His reputation as a master debater preceded him, but there was something about his demeanor tonight, a slight hesitation in his step, that hinted at unease. On the other side, Leavitt strode in with polished precision, clad in a sharp suit and tie. He exuded calmness, almost as if he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head. The moderator kicked things off by laying out the ground rules. No personal attacks, stick to facts, and keep responses concise. But anyone watching knew better. These two weren't here to play nice, they were here to win. And from the very first question, sparks began to fly. The opening topic centered around Melania Trump's role as First Lady. Carville wasted no time diving into his critique, accusing her of failing to use her platform effectively to address pressing issues like education or healthcare. "She had the chance to make a real difference," he said firmly, pointing a finger for emphasis. "Instead, we got photo ops and vague statements." Leavitt didn't flinch. With a small smile, he leaned forward and delivered his counterpoint. "First ladies don't operate in a vacuum," he explained. "Every move they make is scrutinized, dissected, and criticized. Melania chose to focus on initiatives she truly cared about, like combating cyberbullying. That's not failure, it's staying true to yourself under immense pressure." The crowd erupted into applause, and Carville looked momentarily taken aback. For someone who prided himself on being quick on his feet, this was unfamiliar territory. Instead of firing back immediately, he paused, collecting his thoughts before responding. When he did speak again, his tone was sharper, almost defensive. "Staying true to yourself doesn't mean ignoring bigger problems," he shot back. "It means stepping up when the moment demands it." Leavitt nodded thoughtfully, then struck again. "Let's be honest," he said, his voice steady but cutting. "Criticism isn't new for Melania, or for anyone in the Trump family. What's interesting is how selective some critiques are. Where was all this outrage when Michelle Obama focused on fitness and nutrition? Or when Laura Bush championed literacy?" The jab hit home, drawing murmurs of agreement from parts of the audience. Carville shifted in his seat, clearly frustrated. He tried to pivot to broader policy discussions, bringing up controversies surrounding the Trump administration. But Leavitt was ready. Each time Carville lobbed an accusation, Leavitt deflected it with data, anecdotes, or clever reframing. At one point, when Carville accused Leavitt of dodging tough questions, the younger man simply smiled and said, "I'm not dodging anything. I'm answering what you're actually saying instead of what you're implying. By the halfway mark of the debate, it was clear that Leavitt was gaining the upper hand. His ability to blend logic with relatability made him a compelling speaker. He spoke directly to the audience, making eye contact and using simple language that resonated. Meanwhile, Carville seemed increasingly flustered. His usual rapid-fire delivery started to feel less like passion and more like desperation. He stumbled over words, repeated points without adding new insights, and occasionally resorted to sarcasm, a tactic that played well in smaller settings but fell flat in front of a national audience. One particularly memorable exchange came when the moderator asked both men about their views on civility and politics. Carville argued that tough talk was necessary to expose hypocrisy and hold leaders accountable. "You can't sugarcoat everything," he declared. "Sometimes you have to call a spade a spade." Leavitt agreed, but only partially. "Accountability matters," he conceded, "but accountability without respect leads nowhere. We can challenge each other without tearing each other down." Then, turning to Carville, he added softly, "Maybe it's time to ask ourselves whether our words build bridges or walls." For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Even Carville seemed caught off guard by the sincerity in Leavitt's tone. It wasn't a zinger or a clever comeback. It was a genuine appeal to rethink the way debates are conducted. Some audience members nodded approvingly while others exchanged glances, unsure how to react. As the clock ticked down to the final minutes, the energy in the room shifted. Carville made one last attempt to regain control, launching into a passionate monologue about the importance of truth-telling in politics. But by then, the damage was done. Leavitt's composed performance had left a lasting impression, and the audience responded accordingly. When the debate ended, the applause was louder and longer for Leavitt than for Carville. Backstage after the event, reactions poured in. Supporters of both men took to social media to declare victory, but most neutral observers agreed that Leavitt had won the night. Clips of his key moments went viral, with viewers praising his poise and preparation. "He didn't just argue, he connected," one commenter wrote. "That's why he came out on top." Carville, for his part, retreated quietly. Sources close to him later revealed that he spent hours replaying the debate in his mind, analyzing where things went wrong. Friends described him as reflective but determined, not defeated but humbled. "James knows he's still got fight left in him," one insider said. But nights like this remind him that the game is changing. For Leavitt, the victory was sweet but bittersweet. While he celebrated the win, he also recognized the weight of responsibility that came with it. "This isn't about me versus him," he told reporters afterward. "It's about reminding ourselves that we can disagree without losing sight of our shared humanity." And so, as the dust settled and the nation moved on to the next headline, one thing was undeniable. The debate marked a turning point. Not just for these two men, but for the way we think about discourse in an era defined by division. The battle may have ended, but the lessons it offered would linger long after the cameras stopped rolling. The morning after the debate, the nation woke up to a whirlwind of reactions. Social media timelines were flooded with hot takes, memes, and endless commentary. News outlets scrambled to dissect every moment of the heated exchange, replaying key clips on loop. Some praised Matt Leavitt's calm demeanor and sharp arguments, while others defended James Carville's fiery passion, insisting he was still a force to be reckoned with. It was clear that the debate had left an indelible mark, not just on the two men at its center, but on the public discourse as a whole. For Leavitt, the aftermath felt like stepping into a spotlight brighter than ever before. His phone buzzed nonstop with messages from supporters, colleagues, and even strangers congratulating him on his performance. Conservative media outlets hailed him as a rising star, inviting him onto their shows to discuss everything from policy issues to his strategy for taking down such a seasoned opponent. One host called him the new face of reasoned resistance, and while another joked, "If debates were boxing matches, you'd have knocked him out in the 5th round." But Leavitt didn't let the praise go to his head. In interviews following the debate, he remained humble, emphasizing that this wasn't about personal glory. "I didn't do this to win points or settle scores," he said during one appearance. I did it because I believe in standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. This message resonated deeply with many viewers, especially those who felt tired of the constant bickering and negativity in politics. They saw Leavitt not just as a defender of the Trump family, but as someone advocating for civility and respect in an increasingly polarized world. Meanwhile, James Carville found himself navigating uncharted waters. Known for bouncing back quickly from setbacks, this time felt different. Friends and colleagues noticed a shift in his usual swagger. During a radio interview days after the debate, he sounded more reflective than combative. "Look, nobody likes to lose," he admitted. "But sometimes losing teaches you more than winning ever could." When pressed about whether he thought Leavitt had bested him, he paused before answering carefully. "Let's just say he brought his A game, and maybe I underestimated how much the game has changed." That admission, brief as it was, spoke volumes. For decades, Carville had thrived in the rough-and-tumble world of political rhetoric, where loud voices often drowned out quieter ones. But now, in an age dominated by social media and sound bites, subtlety and strategy seemed to carry more weight. Critics argued that his blunt style, once seen as refreshingly honest, risked coming across as outdated, or worse, alienating. Supporters, however, urged him not to change. "James is James," one longtime fan tweeted. "We love him because he tells it like it is, no matter what." Behind closed doors, Carville reportedly spent hours analyzing the debate footage, breaking down each moment to understand where things went sideways. Close friends revealed that he replayed Leavitt's closing remarks multiple times, particularly the part about building bridges instead of walls. He kept muttering, "That kid's got guts," one insider shared. But there was also this sense of frustration, like he couldn't quite figure out how to counter that kind of appeal. While the debate dominated headlines, it also sparked broader conversations about the state of political discourse. Pundits debated whether clashes like this one served any real purpose beyond entertainment. Some argued that they highlighted important issues, forcing people to confront uncomfortable truths. Others countered that these spectacles only deepened divisions, turning complex topics into oversimplified shouting matches. Even late-night comedians weighed in, poking fun at both men while acknowledging the deeper significance of their feud. One host joked, "If we gave Oscars for political drama, these two would be walking away with all the trophies." Another quipped, "At least we can agree on one thing. Neither of them is backing down anytime soon." These jokes may have been lighthearted, but they underscored a sobering reality. The line between politics and performance was blurring faster than anyone anticipated. Amidst all the noise, something remarkable happened. People began talking, not just about Carville and Leavitt, but about the ideas they represented. Families gathered around dinner tables to discuss whether tough talk was necessary or harmful. Students debated the merits of civility versus confrontation in classrooms. Online forums lit up with thoughtful posts exploring the balance between holding leaders accountable and avoiding unnecessary cruelty. For some, the debate became a catalyst for self-reflection. A teacher in Ohio posted a viral thread about how she used the event as a teaching moment for her high school students. "We watched clips together and talked about tone, intent, and impact," she wrote. "They realized that words matter, not just in politics but in everyday life." Another user shared a story about reconciling with a friend after years of bitter disagreements, inspired by Leavitt's call for connection over conflict. As days turned into weeks, both men began to adjust to their new realities. Leavitt embraced his growing prominence, using his platform to advocate for policies he believed in. He spoke at conferences, wrote op-eds, and appeared on panels, always stressing the importance of respectful dialogue. Yet, he never lost sight of his roots. In quieter moments, he reminded himself, and others, that success wasn't about fame or accolades. "It's about doing the work," he told a group of young conservatives during a speech, "and remembering why we started in the first place." Carville, too, adapted in his own way. Though he initially retreated from the limelight, he eventually returned with renewed focus. His commentary grew sharper, yet slightly more measured. Gone were the days of throwing verbal grenades without considering the fallout. Instead, he honed his arguments, ensuring they packed substance alongside punch. Fans noticed the difference immediately. "He's still James," one listener remarked during a call-in show, "but it's like he's leveling up." By the time the dust fully settled, it was clear that neither man emerged unchanged. Leavitt had proven himself as a formidable voice capable of commanding attention without resorting to theatrics. Carville, meanwhile, had learned valuable lessons about evolving with the times while staying true to his core beliefs. Their clash hadn't resolved anything definitively, but it had opened doors to reflection, conversation, and perhaps even understanding. In the end, the real winner wasn't either of them. It was the audience, the millions of people watching, listening, and engaging. Because regardless of where you stood politically, the debate reminded everyone of one undeniable truth: words have power. How we choose to wield that power shapes not just our leaders, but ourselves. As weeks turned into months, the dust from the fiery exchange between James Carville and Matt Leavitt finally began to settle. But the echoes of their clash lingered in unexpected ways, not just for them personally, but for the wider audience who had watched it unfold. What started as a heated argument over politics and personalities had evolved into something far more profound: a mirror reflecting how we communicate, argue, and connect in an increasingly divided world. For James Carville, the experience became a turning point. Known for decades as someone unafraid to speak his mind, often loudly and bluntly, he found himself rethinking his approach. It wasn't that he suddenly decided to soften his tone or shy away from tough conversations. Rather, he realized there was value in meeting people where they were. In interviews months later, he admitted, "You can't just throw bombs anymore. People want substance, sure, but they also want to feel like they're being heard." This shift didn't mean Carville lost his edge. He still showed up on TV with his trademark intensity, but his delivery changed subtly. He focused less on tearing down opponents and more on building bridges, even if those bridges were shaky at first. During one appearance, he surprised viewers by praising Matt Leavitt's debating skills, calling him a worthy adversary. The comment caught many off guard, but it signaled something important: growth. For someone whose career was built on winning arguments, admitting respect for an opponent was no small feat. On the other side, Matt Leavitt continued to rise in prominence, earning invitations to high-profile events and becoming a go-to voice for the Republican Party. Yet despite his newfound fame, he remained grounded. Friends said he often talked about the responsibility that came with having a platform. "It's not enough to win debates," he once told a crowd during a speech. "We have to use these moments to bring people together, not drive them further apart." Leavitt's message resonated because it felt authentic. He wasn't trying to be perfect or untouchable. Instead, he acknowledged the flaws in his own arguments while challenging others to do the same. This humility earned him respect even from those who disagreed with him politically. One liberal journalist wrote a column titled, "Why I Can't Hate Matt Leavitt," describing how his respectful demeanor forced her to reconsider some of her biases. "I don't agree with everything he says," she admitted, "but I can't deny that he makes me think." The ripple effects of their debate extended beyond the two men themselves. Ordinary people across the country began applying lessons from the clash to their own lives. Families reported having healthier discussions around the dinner table, avoiding personal attacks and focusing on issues instead. Teachers incorporated clips of the debate into lesson plans, using it as a case study in effective communication and critical thinking. Even online comment sections, which are notorious for toxicity, saw occasional glimmers of civility, with users reminding each other to stay respectful. One particularly heartwarming story emerged from a small town in the Midwest. A retired couple, lifelong Democrats, shared coffee every Saturday morning with their neighbors, staunch Republicans. Over time, their weekly chats had grown tense due to political differences, until one day, they decided to adopt what they called the Leavitt rule: disagree without disrespecting. Slowly but surely, their conversations became less combative and more collaborative. "We still argue," the husband joked, "but now it's like arguing with friends instead of enemies." Social media played its part too. While platforms are often criticized for amplifying division, this time they helped spread positivity. Hashtags like #debate with respect and words matter gained traction, encouraging users to engage thoughtfully. Memes poking fun at both Carville and Leavitt popped up again, but this time, they carried a lightheartedness that brought people together rather than driving them apart. One viral post featured a cartoon of the two men sitting across from each other sipping tea, with the caption, "Even rivals need coffee breaks." Journalists and analysts couldn't resist weighing in either. Op-eds poured in, dissecting the long-term impact of the debate. Some argued that it highlighted the growing divide between old-school rhetoric and modern sensibilities. Others pointed out that the real victory lay in proving that passionate disagreement could coexist with mutual respect. As one columnist put it, "If Carville and Leavitt can spar without losing sight of their humanity, maybe the rest of us can too." But perhaps the most enduring takeaway was the reminder of why debates matter. They aren't just about scoring points or proving superiority. They're opportunities to challenge assumptions, broaden perspectives, and foster understanding. When done well, they push us to think critically and articulate our beliefs clearly. And when done poorly, they remind us of the work still needed to bridge gaps. Both men eventually crossed paths again, at a charity gala months after the debate. Cameras flashed as they shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and even laughed over a shared memory from the night. Neither man pretended the tension had vanished completely, but there was a sense of mutual admiration. "He gave me a run for my money," Carville quipped to reporters afterward. Leavitt smiled and replied, "And he made me work harder than I ever have." That brief encounter encapsulated the essence of their journey. Two fiercely competitive individuals, rooted in opposing ideologies, had somehow managed to find common ground, not through compromise but through recognition of each other's humanity. It was a powerful reminder that even in the heat of battle, connection is possible. Looking back, it's easy to see why this story captivated so many. It wasn't just about politics or egos. It was about people. Real, flawed, passionate people, navigating a world where opinions collide constantly. Through their words and actions, Carville and Leavitt showed us that conflict doesn't have to destroy relationships. Instead, it can deepen them, if we let it. In the end, the true legacy of their feud wasn't about winners or losers. It was about the countless conversations sparked, the minds opened, and the hearts touched along the way. Because when all is said and done, the measure of any debate isn't who emerges victorious, it's whether it leaves the world a little better than before. And by that standard, this one succeeded beautifully.